I always have these stories with Tyler Peck. Tyler, I'm sorry. 𝐂𝐳𝐿𝐼𝐴𝐼, our ballet mistress, was like, are you all right, Katie? So Robbie and I kept finding reasons to walk back and forth. Hi, you guys. We are doing a little spin-off of Once Upon a Point, which is the series where I tell you stories from my time as a professional dancer, into a series called Core Stories. This was an idea of a friend of mine. Hi, Milena. I was talking to her about Once Upon a Point, and I was like, I'm running out of stories. And she was like, what about all the times you were like in the core in the middle of Nutcracker and Swan Lake and this and that? And I was like, oh my goodness, I have so many more things to say. So we are going to jump back, way back into my first experience with New York City Ballet, Swan Lake. If you watched the video where I talk about getting my apprenticeship, that story is very important in this one. So when I received my apprenticeship with the New York City Ballet, the day or so after workshop, which is the end of the year performance at School of American Ballet, a bunch of us were called into the office. Peter Martins was there and 𝐂𝐴𝐼𝐧𝐝 was there, and they said, congratulations, you all are becoming apprentices with New York City Ballet. Because I think there were 3 boys, David Protus, Anthony Huxley, who is now principal, and Justin Peck. Ever heard of him? But the 3 of them, they were like, boys, have a nice summer. Ladies, you start tomorrow. I'm sorry? What? They were down so many people for Swan Lake that they needed like 4 or 5 more Swans for the Saratoga summer tour. And Swan Lake was going the first week. So the following day, the 4 or 5 of us, it was myself, Megan Mann, who now is on faculty at School of American Ballet, Brittany Pollock, who is a soloist who is also married to Jonathan Stafford. Who was the other one? Oh, Tabitha 𝐕𝐴𝐼𝐴. The 4 of us. We're like, okay, so we take company class, and I remember just being there trying not to be in anyone's way, and the big stars are walking in the room. Jennifer Ringer, Wendy Whalen comes strolling in, and we were all just like, ugh. And there is an article, I think I mentioned it in the video where I got my apprenticeship, that chronicled myself and David Protus, our apprentice year. I will link it below because it talks about us starting with Swan Lake. Just that first rehearsal, we were just kind of all standing there like, and I was doing the very famous swan crossing 𝐵𝑜𝑟𝑒s, and I bit it so hard. And I remember 𝐂𝐳𝐿𝐼𝐴𝐼, our ballet mistress, was like, are you all right, Katie? Very first rehearsal with New York City Ballet, Kathryn Morgan ends up on the floor. It was a very whirlwind process. We learned it very quickly in a few days. City Ballet is very famous for their fast rehearsal process. Within a week or 2, we were going to Saratoga. Swans is very difficult for the core. It's a lot of moving parts. It's a lot of formations. It's a lot of having to think and watch and being peripheral and who is where and what and how. If you are a woman in a ballet company, 99% of us have done Swans. It's kind of a rite of passage for a woman in ballet. If you're in a company and you're a professional dancer, chances are you have done or will do Swans, Snow, and if you're in a company that does it, Willies and Giselle. All of us have done it. It's a lot of pressure because of how intricate the patterns are. If you're off, if you're wrong, it's very obvious. And it's really, really challenging because a lot of the times you are standing there for a solid 2 minutes with an arm in the air and your fingers start to fall asleep and your arm starts to fall asleep. And I remember having this little trick of slightly moving my fingers to keep the blood circulating in my arm ever so slightly, keep the arm awake, and then standing there, and then your muscles are gripping, and then all of a sudden you have to do like a leg row. It's so difficult. Another thing I want to link for you actually that I'm going to below, a series they did a while back now on the English National Ballet called Agony and Ecstasy, and the first episode is all about English National Ballet's performance of Swan Lake at the Royal Albert Hall in London. And it shows you the core of women doing swans and what it takes. It's a great, great documentary. I will link it below for you. Really, the first episode is the only one I can find right now, but I encourage you, if you're a ballet fan and you especially want to know the ins and outs of Swan Lake, go and watch that. And so being in this group, it's also very satisfying because you're in a group, you're all working together, you're looking at each other, you're in it. It's such a satisfying piece to do because you feel so accomplished by the end. You not only do the second act, we also do the fourth act as a swan. Other thing with ballet companies, 90% of them, you're not just a swan. You will be somewhere else in the ballet. So for example, a lot of us did the waltz at the beginning in the prologue, in the very first scene. A lot of people are somehow involved in the ballroom scene, whether you're a divertissement, whether you're a court person. I remember doing court ladies as well as swans while we were in Saratoga, just to kind of make up numbers in the back. So you're in all four acts. Even if there's one intermission, they usually still call it 1, 2, 3, and 4. You're on the whole time. So usually if you're in prologue, you do the waltz, you have to like really fast change because it's a fast change. It might be only like Siegfried's solo and the entrance with Rothbart. The very famous Swan entrance is a challenge because you're doing the same step, I don't know, 24 times, 28 times, I never counted. And you have to, when you're doing that line, because you're all having to do it together, you're doing it in the wings, marking. So you're all on the same foot, you're all on the same leg, because depending on the version, sometimes it'll change legs, sometimes it won't change legs, and if you start on the wrong leg, it's a mess. And so you're doing it in the wing as you're weaving. Different productions have different ways of structuring swans. I believe we had 20, possibly 24, because of the 4 signets. The 4 signets are amongst the core, at least in City Ballet's version, and they do part of that entrance. Some versions, they're not. I believe in ABT's, if I remember correctly, they come in later. They don't do the entrance. So sometimes the signets and the big swans, there's also big swans, are hidden amongst the core. I never did signets. That's more of a senior core soloist kind of role in most companies because it's so hard. It is super difficult because it's, first of all, it's fast. But second of all, you're holding on to people. Like it's just, and you're like kicking people in the embouteils, and the signets is meant to look very simple and easy, but it is so difficult. If you're off, you kick somebody. Couple of fun stories from Swan Lake. Saratoga Springs, New York. We are outside. It's an outdoor theater. The theater itself is covered. So backstage is inside, the stage itself is covered, and then the audience, some of the audience is covered, and then some of the audience can sit on the lawn. So it's outside, so there are bugs involved. And I remember, I always have these stories with Tyler Peck. Tyler, I'm sorry. Tyler and I have so many weird moments, like the pen that fell out of the sky in snow and we collided. This was another Tyler Peck story. I was behind her in the line, and a fly landed on her shoulder in the middle of the second act pas de deux. And so it gave me something to do as we're standing there for 2 minutes. And I just remember watching the fly on Tyler's shoulder. And poor Tyler, of course, if you feel a bug on you, you cannot move. You can't, So I don't know if she felt it or not, but this little fly just walked around her shoulders, and I was thoroughly engaged. I remember doing in Peter Martin's version, in the 4th act, half of the swans turn to black. So we get black tutus. I remember being a black swan in the 4th. That was really fun to be able to be, it's like half the swans turn evil, basically. Or Rothbart turns half the swans evil. I actually really do love the ending of Peter Martin's version of Swan Lake. She does not die. They don't throw themselves off the cliff into the mattress, which I'm sure you've seen. Go look at Bella Boylston's Instagram or Skylar Brandt's Instagram, and you can see the last exit where they throw themselves off the cliff, they land on a mattress and roll away. Our version, they don't die. It's kind of a Giselle situation where she becomes a swan for eternity and he just ends up, the curtain comes down with him walking forward, kind of like an Albrecht. But the way she exits and she kind of folds into the swans, I just remember that being really special. The ending of City Ballet's Swan Lake is really beautiful, and the music and the lighting, and that was one of my favorite parts to do, just because it swells and you have to like make sure you don't hit her, but like we just fold, we kind of envelop her. It was really beautiful. I loved that part. And it's one of those pieces when you're doing it, it's such a bonding experience. You're all dying together, basically. You're all killing your shoes. You're all getting calf cramps. You're all getting arch cramps. You're all sweating your guts out. Those big core pieces are so great to do because you're such a unit and everybody's in it together. Even in the wings, like encouraging each other, or sometimes if a new person got thrown in, kind of like counting them through it, like, all right, run, and then soutenu, It's such a fulfilling role to do, no matter what version you do, no matter what company it is, because you feel like you danced and you are sweating. The formations, and it's such the heart of the piece. Yeah, that was such a blast doing Swans. I really, really enjoyed doing that. So that Saratoga, I did court with all my fellow apprentices and Swans. So we were not actually in the prologue. I don't think any apprentices were in the prologue. So we did Swans, court, Swans. The next time it went, weirdly, because Swan Lake is not one that New York City Ballet does a lot. It's not like American Ballet Theater where it comes back quite frequently. The next time it came back, I was a soloist. When you're a soloist at City Ballet, because of the size of the company, you are not a swan. Many ballet companies, like I said, will put soloists in Swans to do Four Little Swans, do the signets. But we were such a big company, we didn't need the extra people. I remember the signets at that point being senior corps. So soloists in the company do Pas de Trois and a lot of the diverts in third. So I did Pas de Trois, and then Peter Martins has a Pas de Quatre, which is 3 women and 1 man in the ballroom scene. And it is so hard. So hard. I'll talk about Pas de Trois in a second because it's more iconic, and I have a fantastic story about Pas de Trois. Finn thinks so too. It's still part of the Swan Lake score. It's a piece that's not often used in that third act. A lot of the companies take it out, and typically the lead in Pas de Quatre is for a soloist or principal that's not doing Odette. So I remember some of the like baby principals, like Megan Fairchild before she did Odette did Pas de Quatre. Tyler Peck, the lead in Pas de Quatre. Before she did Odette, she did the lead. Sterling, all of them. I did one of the 2 side girls. Each of them get a variation. My variation was glissade, brise, land on point, chassé on point, brise, land on point. Y'all, so hard. I just remember being like, I think even one point I was rehearsing it, and I said to Pierre, I was like, this is not, he's like, yeah, not your thing? No, but I gave this to you because this is good for you. It's like, cool. Great. And then there's 1 man, and I remember doing it with, I think we did it with Gonzalo, who is the new artistic director of Miami City Ballet, who is one of the nicest human beings on the planet. I'm so happy for him. So it was me, Megan Fairchild, and somebody else, and I can't remember who it was. So I did that, and then I did Pas de Trois, which is, of course, the famous thing at the beginning with 𝐵𝑒𝑛𝑦. And 𝐵𝑒𝑛𝑦 is the prince's friend. And usually the Pas de Trois boy. Sometimes it's a different boy. But in many companies, the prince's friend does the Pas de Trois. I did that with Gretchen Smith and Robbie Fairchild. And who else did I do it with? Robbie got switched in for somebody at one point. Maybe 𝐂𝐴DRienne Danchik-Waring was my other 𝐵𝑒𝑛𝑦. And fun story about Pas de Trois. There was one night, Robbie and I were getting ready. I think Gretchen was there too. The 3 of us were just kind of like chilling. We were walking out of the Gretchen and I were walking out of the changing room, which if you didn't know, at New York City Ballet, all costumes stay on stage level. You don't get dressed in your dressing room. You have to come down to the stage to like this curtained off area where all the costumes are kept. You cannot go up the elevator in your costume because heaven forbid you get stuck. You have to stay on the stage level in costume. So Gretchen and I came down, we got dressed. As we're coming out of the little curtained off area, we noticed this couple standing in the corner near the water fountain, but like very huddled and very by themselves. And we were like, that's really weird. It was Justin Timberlake and Jessica Biel. They were at the ballet and they were holding them backstage. They obviously, rightly so, didn't get mobbed out into the audience. And then they were going to walk them out to the audience. And we were just like, so Robbie and I kept finding reasons to walk back and forth from the water. Like, I need more water, don't you? So we'd walk and we'd talk and we'd walk back. And then we were like, we need more water. Don't we need more water? Yeah, we need more. So Robbie and I would walk, we walk back. We never actually ended up speaking with them because we would never dare to approach them. We kept finding reasons to go back to the water fountain. I'm sure it was obvious by the second time that we were doing this. But yeah, I did Pas de Trois for Justin Timberlake and Jessica Biel in the audience. And I remember the 3 of us having a lot more sparkle that night than we usually did. It is another one that is so hard, just like annoyingly hard, just weird, intricate stuff, hard solos. I was the second girl. The first girl is like the 𝐂𝐴𝐵𝐵 and 𝐶𝐶 girl, and then there's the boy, and then there's the last girl who's like the bum 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 da 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 da. I was that girl. I remember it went the week after Sleeping Beauty, where I had debuted Aurora. So anything after Sleeping Beauty was easy. And I remember Tyler Angle, who was my prince in Sleeping Beauty, was watching our cast do Pas de Trois. And he said to me afterwards, he was like, you looked so relaxed. Your expression the whole time was like, this is not Aurora. This is so much easier, because that's how I felt. I remember rehearsing Pas de Trois, going, this is really hard and I'm tired, and we have the entrada and the solos and the coda, and then like just being tired. Once we did it in context after the week of Sleeping Beauty, I was like, oh, this is nothing compared to that. So I really enjoyed my Pas de Trois experience. I had a great time doing Pas de Trois. I loved doing Pas de Trois. Pas de Quatre was just hard and annoying, to be honest. The brisés landing on point. The other hard thing about anybody that's a divert in the ball scene is you have to wait around for an hour and intermission, so you don't do anything until the ball scene, because when you're a soloist, remember, you're not in Swans. Anybody that's in the corps is in Swans, so you're on stage, you're warm, you change, and then you do your divert, or then you do princesses, or then you do whatever you need in the ballroom. When you're a soloist, you have to wait around through prologue and act 1 to get to the ballroom scene. But yeah, those are my Swan Lake stories. Swans is just any role like that where you're on for that long doing that much dancing. It is so satisfying. It's like Serenade, like we said in the Serenade video. It is so satisfying. You feel like I came and I danced, and that's what I loved about doing Swan Lake. And you're such a unit, and you get each other through it. And for us too, you know, with City Ballet, with the corps, there are very rare occasions where you get an alternate. Swan Lake ever only goes for us 1 or 2 weeks at most. But even within that 2 weeks, the corps stays the same. So if you come to see Swan Lake several times with 3 different Odettes, the Swans are the same. They don't alternate. I don't even think Cygnet's alternated. So it's like, it's exhausting for the corps, because while the Odettes switch out, the corps never does. So the next time you go see a Swan Lake, particularly if it's in the middle of a run, know that this might be the 5th, 6th, 7th time in a row the corps has done this show. And so I just want to shout that out. Please notice the Swans, notice the corps, know that 90% of the time they have to do every performance of it. Without them, the ballet is not the same ballet. Swan Lake is as beautiful as it is. Yes, the principals are stunning, and it's the role of Odette Odile is extremely difficult, but without that body behind them, it doesn't have the impact. Shout outs to anybody who's ever done Swans, which is basically every woman in ballet at this point. But yeah, we've all done it. We've all had to do it. We have all survived through it. It is very rewarding, but it is very challenging. So just take a second and appreciate the women doing Swans. That's my core story on that. Oh my goodness. We have so many stories we can get to with this series. So thanks, Milena, for the idea. And let me know if there are any core ballets you want me to talk about. I'm kind of going through any Serenade stories in the deconstructions. If I can't think of a story to tell you about that, we'll do a separate video on Serenade, but I'm kind of going through that as we do the deconstruction. But yeah, let me know. If you missed the video about me finally telling you that I'm an autumn and not a spring, it's right there. You can click it to watch. Love you guys, and I'll see you next time.